welcome to Medicine for the Soul Yoga. My name is Kat and this is part 21 of our Journey to Crow Pose series, and today we will be building on what we have practiced already, really building up strength in the core, in the hip flexors, and giving Crow Pose a go. So I hope you enjoy. So we will be starting today in tabletop, so go ahead and get your hands underneath the shoulders and the knees underneath the hips. We want to be pushing the feet down into the mat and having this real sense of lift. So similar to in our plank pose and also in our crow pose, we want to feel ourselves pushing out of the ground with the hands and almost rounding the top of the shoulders. So these shoulders that are kind of rounded are really, really strong. If we allow the shoulders to dip and our chest to kind of fall through, this is quite a weak position, and this is not going to be very useful for us when jumping back. So we want to push out the ground and have this really strong position, slightly squeezing in the core so the core is activated, the fingertips are pushing into the mat, the tops of the feet are pushing into the mat, and we're really active in our tabletop. Focus on the breath for a moment here, breathing deeply through the nose. And we'll just take a few cat-cows to loosen up the spine so we can exhale and curl the tailbone under, chin into the chest. Inhale, arch the back, roll the shoulders, lift the chin. So you can close the eyes and really focus on the movements here. Really good. Flowing with the breath, becoming at one with your body and with the breath. Next time we have a rounded back, we're going to hold the spine like this and we're going to gently pulse forward and back. Remembering to keep the pressure in both feet. Can you feel all 10 toes on the ground? Can you feel all 10 fingertips into the ground as well? So really feeling very grounded and supported here. Can maybe start to bring the shoulders over the wrists, so we're beginning to warm up the wrists slightly. Good. And then we'll come all the way back down onto our hips, and we can just bring the knees out slightly wider, slide the hands forward and bring the forehead down. Bring the elbows down, relax the shoulders, maybe inching the knees out slightly wider to begin to open up the inside of the hips. We can wiggle the hips side to side gently. Big deep breath through the nose. Good, and then we'll lift up the head, lift up the hands, slide the hands slightly back and draw the knees in. And we're going to tuck the toes, give your ankles a little wiggle and a roll around if needed. And we're going to hover the knees above the ground, and we're going to come into plank. The shoulders might be slightly over the wrists, that's okay. And it actually means that you're working a bit harder. As we exhale, we're going to push back to this crouching position, squeeze in the core. As we inhale, lengthen the legs forward. As we exhale, bring ourselves back. So flow with the breath. Exhale back, working the quads, working the core and the shoulders here. Good. One more time. We come forward into plank. And just check in with your plank here. Fingers should be spread, hips are down. We don't want the hips to be up like this. It means our core isn't working. So make sure the hips are down, shoulders are over the wrists or slightly further over the wrists. Kneecaps are lifted, which means the legs are switched on. Imagine you want to draw the heels down and back. So we're lengthening the legs, we're squeezing the glutes. One more big inhale. Really good. And bring the knees down together. And then exhale again. Release back to child's pose. And this time we can slide the hands either side of the body and have the palms facing forward. And just feel the shoulder blades melting away from the body. Just take a moment here to bring yourself back to the breath. Good, and then we'll place the hands underneath the shoulders and gently draw ourselves up to sitting on the shins. Give the shoulders a nice roll. We can place the hands on the shoulders and make big circles with the elbows. Good, and then we'll just shake out the wrists. Give them a little warm up. So by now you'll know lots of different ways to warm up the wrists. So really just flow with whatever comes to you. A bit of free movement here, it's your practice, so whatever feels good. Good, really important to warm up the wrists and give them a bit of strength as well. Perfect, so we're going to come into plank and we're going to cover and really break down a vinyasa just to go over again exactly how to do it. So a vinyasa is a sequence of poses that we practice in vinyasa yoga. We start in a downward facing dog. To begin with, we're just going to get the downward facing dog really correct. So we're going to inhale, lift up the heels, bend the legs, push the chest towards the thighs, feel the tailbone lifting, roll the shoulders away from the ears, keeping the chest and the tailbone here and lifting up. We're going to gently lengthen the legs and draw the heels down towards the mat. You can feel the kneecaps are lifting, so the quads are engaged. Big deep breath through the nose. Good, we're going to look forward and we're going to roll ourselves forward into plank. You might find you need to just step the feet back slightly to give yourself some space. Again, how we had earlier in our tabletop, we're pushing out the hands and really rounding off the top of the shoulders. So it's a super solid and strong plank. Imagine like someone was trying to push your back down. You would be really pushing up against them and holding your space rather than collapsing down. Squeeze the core into the spine. Big inhale. We're going to take our vinyasa with the knees to start with. Drop the knees. The hips come down too. One long line. Bring the feet onto the mat. And then we're going to bring the chest and chin down. Elbows are hugging in. Inhale. We're going to roll up into our cobra. Squeeze the glutes. And exhale, tuck the toes and push back to downward facing dog. Rearrange your feet if you need to. And perhaps pedaling out the heels feels good here as well. Big deep breath through the nose. Good. Next inhale, we're going to roll forward again to plank. Again, rearrange yourself as is needed. Option 2, use the knees here, or options 2, try out vinyasa without the knees and coming into low plank, which is also called chaturanga. So we come down halfway and then we straighten the arms, come into our upward facing dog on an inhale, draw the shoulders back and exhale back to downward facing dog. Really good. We'll bring the knees down into our tabletop. Just take a moment here, maybe a few cat-cows, maybe a bit of fluid movement, whatever feels good for you. Good. And then we'll bring the knees slightly further back and we'll come into our supported plank. So shoulders, hips and knees are in one long line. And we're going to practice a few tricep push-ups. So this is where we really build our strength for chaturanga or low plank. We want to really keep the elbows hugging in. So it's not like a normal push-up where we have the chest quite wide and it works the chest and the shoulders and the elbows come out to the side. We're having the hands in about shoulder width apart and the elbows are coming back, so it works the back of the arms, the triceps, and this is what we need to build for our chaturanga and for our crow pose transition. So we'll do it with the knees down to start with. We're going to squeeze in the core, and as we exhale, we're going to come all the way down and then inhale, push up. Don't worry if that's too hard, just do what you can. And we're going to take 5 of these if we can. If you can't, then an option is just to hold yourself wherever you can with the arms slightly bent, because that's still quite difficult as well. 2 more if you're moving with me. You can feel it really burning. 1 more. And inhale, come up. Good. Push back to our child's pose. Forehead on the mat. Big deep breaths. Maybe massaging the forehead out side to side. We'll release the arms slightly, so we'll bring the hands back, interlace the hands behind the back, straighten the arms and lift the hips, coming onto the crown of the head. Big deep breath through the nose As we release the hands over the back of the body. Take a few deep breaths here through the nose. Good, and then we'll gently roll back. Place the hands underneath the shoulders and gently sit up. Really good. We're going to bring the feet out wide in our low yogi squat. Bring the palms to the chest if you can, otherwise on the floor. And draw the shoulder blades down the back, really pushing the palms together, and allow the elbows to push the knees apart. Close down the eyes and focus on the breath. We're going to place the hands down and we're going to do a little kind of frog bunny hop to 3/4 up the mat. So just placing the hands down and bunny hop forward. And we're going to come into our crow pose. So spreading the fingers, releasing out any tension in the hips that you need to do to begin with. Good. Lifting up the hips, coming into your crow pose. So people have different ways that is more comfortable for them. If you have a cushion, you can place that here that can help, especially when jumping back. If your arms collapse a bit, then at least you're not smashing your face into the mat. And don't be afraid to fall here. Don't be afraid to fall onto the mat. It's not a very high distance and you'll be absolutely fine. Coming forward, finding our crow pose. Option to, of course, stay here and just work towards bringing the toes together and maybe lifting and tucking the feet up. This is where we need to be before we think about jumping back. So just working with that for a moment and really squeezing the elbows together. You can feel it working the back of the arms. If you'd like to try hopping back, you can give that a go. Just really focus on squeezing the core and keeping the hips lifted. And when we jump back, we want to be jumping back into chaturanga. So we're jumping back into low plank. So as we jump back, the elbows stay bent and they stay in the same position. And we come to our low plank. So I'm going to do that now. So you can watch if you'd like, or give it a go yourself, or just stay in your crow pose. And then inhale, lift the chest up. Just be careful when you jump back to not let the arms bend too much and allow the chest to come too far down. We want to try and keep chaturanga arms, which is a 45-degree angle. So try to keep the chest fairly lifted. Give that a little go if you'd like. And when you're done with that, we're going to sit back onto the hips. Bring the soles of the feet together and just gently come into a nice forward fold, swaying side to side. Big deep breath through the nose. Good. We're going to sit back up and we're just going to do a little bit of core work before we finish, because the core is really very important to give us the strength to bring our legs all the way back. So we'll draw the knees in. And a really great core exercise that works the lower core, which is what we need to be using, is lying on our back and bringing the feet up. And we can have the hands either side of the body with the palms facing down to help support us. We want to keep the lower back pressing into the mat. So if you put your hands underneath, you wouldn't be able to get them through. If your lower back starts lifting up, you're bringing some tension to the lower back and you're starting to use the lower back muscles instead of the core. So if that begins to happen, bend the legs so that it's just taking it back a level and begin to engage your core again. Otherwise, you can bring a bit of tension to the lower back. So try to keep the legs straight if you can, but if your lower back starts to lift, bend your legs. And we're going to exhale, bring the feet all the way down, and then inhale, squeeze the core up, and then lift up the hips. So exhale all the way down, inhale, squeeze up, and then lift up the hips. As I said, we can do this with the legs bent, tap the toes, and then lift up the hips. So wherever you are, working, squeezing the core, we really want to engage the core, so focus on squeezing the belly button into the spine, keeping the lower back completely pressed against the mat. We're going to do 3 more. Use the breath. Bend the legs if you need to. Last one. Really good. We'll hug the knees into the chest. Bring the forehead up to the knees and gently rock side to side. Big deep breath through the nose. And we'll release. And bring the feet down onto the mat. And we're going to inhale, lift up the hips and squeeze the glutes and squeeze the knees together. Just release out the core. Feel a nice stretch as you push the chest towards the chin and squeeze and hug the knees together. And then exhale, rolling down the back vertebrae by vertebrae, all the way down, folding the pelvis on the mat. Really good. We're going to come into plow pose to finish, just to release the upper body and come into a nice inversion. So again, we'll place the hands either side of the body and we'll push up with the hands and we'll just let the feet fly behind the head, so support the hips. A very easy, relaxing pose. Don't worry about getting the feet to the mat behind you. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Just focus on the breath. And the lovely release across the back of the shoulders, the lower back, and also into the hamstrings. Closing down the eyes. Beginning to slow down the breath. And then we'll very gently begin to roll down the back. Feel each vertebrae make contact. Can bend into the legs. Feel the lower back reaching the mat. Really good. We'll lengthen both legs out long and we'll just come into a quick counter pose, fish pose. Bring the forearms again onto the mat and we're going to lift ourselves up, sitting on the hands. So sit on one hand and then the other. Big inhale and exhale, lean back with the head. Take a few deep breaths here. Options to keep the legs on the mat for a more restorative version. Nice stretch of the core as well. Or option to point the toes, bring the feet together and lift the feet up. Wherever you are, holding here. And gently release. Bring up the head, release the head down onto the ground. Really good, release the hands. Happy baby. So soles of the feet facing up, hold onto the ankles or the outside edges of the feet and draw the ankles down. Feel that lovely release in the inside of the thighs, gently rocking side to side. Big deep breaths through the nose. Good. And then we'll release the feet and come into a nice spinal twist, left leg over right. Let the legs fall to the right, look over the left shoulder, breathing deeply. Inhale back to center, wrap the right leg over the left. Gently releasing the legs over to the left, look over the right shoulder. Good, and then gently coming back to center. Releasing both legs out long. Palms facing up. Any final movements that you feel your body needs, absolutely do them. Before we commit to just a moment of stillness in our Shavasana. Feel the rise and fall of the tummy with every breath. Feel the shoulder blades relaxing and melting into the ground. Feel any tension from the face dissolve. Allow your body to rest after a difficult practice. Feel proud of yourself for committing to it and finishing the practice. And lie here in stillness for as long as you can or need to today. Thank you for joining me.